May 27th, I was 8 years old. It's the most formative day of my entire life. I have such wonderful, happy day memories of my life. Birth of my children, wedding, but that day from start to finish sticks out.
May 27th, 1997. It's a warm, muggy May day.
It was a normal work day in May. You might have a severe thunderstorm or two. Never in our wildest dreams could we imagine that the atmosphere could produce what it ended up producing that day.
It started the day before, actually, when Jim Spencer, our meteorologist, was telling everyone, tomorrow we might have some active weather, so you might want to have that in your plans for the early evening newscast. And okay, we trust Jim implicitly, and he's usually right. So we came in the next day, and he was quite concerned about what he was seeing.
It was perfectly sunny. I mean, it was a normal Tuesday. The restaurant was pretty full. If you can believe it or not, Chili's was one of the only sit-down restaurants in Round Rock at the time. So we were busy all the time.
Hey, we have to do some errands. We need to go to the post office. We need to go and, pick up some groceries.
I remember going outside with my mom, and she was just like pulling weeds, and I'm just sitting out there, and it was sunny. It was like, I'm like, it's not gonna storm, I'm like, whatever.
Particularly on that day, we weren't necessarily thinking about tornadoes, but we did know that there was a large potential for at least getting large severe thunderstorms. Typically, to get tornado outbreaks, you talk about a lot of wind shear or the wind speeds being very strong in the upper part of the atmosphere. We didn't have that this day, but we did have a lot of moisture, a lot of humidity, and just a lot of potential energy into the atmosphere.
I came into work, fairly typical time, early afternoon, nothing going on here yet, but storms had started firing up in Waco. There had been at least, as I recall, 6 or 7 tornado touchdowns developing southwest along that little boundary that we didn't even think might fire a storm that day. Tornadoes were developing and they were coming toward Williamson County.
The sky just got progressively darker, and it was a very eerie feeling because it was not only dark, but part of the sky was, it was like hints of green. We had never seen that before, but I just remember what it sounded like and what it felt like. And it was very peaceful, it was very calm, and it was almost like nature was settled.
I remember going by the Igo's automotive shop. My sister went to high school with them, so we were all friendly. I remember driving through town, waving at the Igo boys. So we went back and went swimming and started to notice that the clouds just looked green.
My parents work opposite schedules. My dad worked overnight, and my mom worked during the day. So my dad had already come home, but he was already asleep at this point.
Good afternoon once again from the News 36 First. We went on the air before anyone else, and we went wall to wall. So we started warning people in Jarrell in 25, 30 minutes before the tornado actually developed and moved into Jarrell.
A tornado warning in effect for northern Williamson County, including you folks in the Jarrow area.
We were watching KXAN. We were watching Jim Spencer broadcasting.
If you live in a mobile home in the Jarrow area, you need to get out of the mobile home right now and get to another place.
I remember going to my bedroom with my mom. We pulled the mattress off of my bed and held on to the side of the mattress. The handles with my mom, my sisters, and myself, and you couldn't even see out the windows at our house. It was completely black. And then it got quiet, very, very, very quiet. And I remember asking my mom, are we going to die? And she said, I don't know, sweetie. And she said, but we're just gonna pray and let's all hang on to the mattress.
So once the tornado first developed, and it appeared, it was going to cross Interstate 35. The DPS troopers shut down 35 north of here.
The guests were coming in the door, but they weren't coming in to eat. They were coming off of I-35, and they weren't hungry, they were seeking shelter, and they were visibly shaken, visibly upset. I was looking around and I noticed that the windows of the restaurant were breathing. They were bowing in. And if you know how Chili's is laid out, most of the tables are around a window. So at that point, I had everybody get up from the table and get into the center of the restaurant, which was the bar.
Well, being the news anchor, you normally assume you're going to be here all day and not leave the building. But when we saw what was happening, we needed as many hands on deck out in the field. So Stacy Scheibel, my co-anchor at the time, stayed here, and I was one of the last ones to leave because, I'd assumed I'd be here. But you go too, because we need everybody out to get as much video as possible and bring it in and put it on the air.
DPS and all the authorities here are just advising you to please stay off the road.
What did they tell you to cover before they sent you out?
They just said head north on I-35.
Motorists along the interstate jumped out of their vehicles and took cover under overpasses.
About that time, I saw a table flipping down the parking lot, end over end. I looked to the right of what now it was a restaurant. Back then it was El Phoenix. I saw part of the roof lift up. There was a girl, there was a server, I'll never forget her. She's standing in the kitchen, she's just bawling. She couldn't do anything except cry, and I'm screaming at her, "It's gonna be okay,"
Speaking of that, it was about here, somewhere in this area, that our photographer first spotted the tornado as it was spinning up into the F5.
Right now we've got the Jarrow video. That's the funnel cloud we're talking about. Look at the magnitude of that tornado. That's from Jarrow this afternoon. We're now going to go to Robert Hadlock. He is standing by live in Austin. He's been out all afternoon.
Well, Stacy, let's go back to that amazing picture. This is the first time I've been able to see that tornado in Jarrow that we were trying to get up there to see. Our crew...
Looking at the breadth of that tornado, was it tough to make out just how big of a deal it was just on a little monitor?
Right, but it became clear when Mike Price, who shot that, came back and told everyone what it was like just to be there to see it.
Talking to some tornado spotters that are friends of mine in Oklahoma City, and now this video, they're telling me from their vantage point in Oklahoma City, one of our former photojournalists who now works up in there, and he's looked at the videotape that I told you a few minutes ago, looks to me to be F3, F4 at least. He tells me that this storm to him looks a whole lot like one he shot near Pampa, Texas a couple of years ago, a tornado that was rated F5.
3/4 mile wide, 260 to 300 mile per hour wind, the strongest wind that nature can make on the planet.
What are the key differences between the original Fujita scale and the new enhanced Fujita scale?
When Dr. Fujita first came up with that scale, way back when, many, many decades ago, you can imagine, technology was there, but not to where it is now. He kind of thought that, wind speeds of 260 to 300 miles per hour were needed to totally flatten and destroy a house or a building. We now know with the enhanced Fujita scale and the research that it only takes literally about 200 mile per hour wind to do that. So the damage is the same from both scales, it's just that the actual wind speeds that we equate to the actual numbers are a little bit lower.
It's going too. Yeah. Oh yeah.
Here in South Central Texas, about 80% of our tornadoes that we've had over the last 60 years or so have been in the EF0, EF1 scale, the weak tornadoes. When you start talking about EF4s and EF5 tornadoes, like the Jarrow was an EF5, you're talking about catastrophic sort of damage.
I remember my mom told me to go wake up my dad again. My dad had told me to take the cushions off the couch and to take him in the bathroom, so I did that. My parents are kind of standing there in the doorway and they're looking out, outside. And I remember kind of squeezing in between them, and I could see off in the distance, just this one little, very skinny little string, And
I could see it over the trees, and it had a long tail on it. Mm-hmm. And I said, "Oh no, dear Lord, please not that."
As the tornado got to the subdivision across that road is when it really formed into the F5 260 mile per hour plus tornado monster.
They kind of pushed me away and they're like, go get in the bathtub, whatever. few minutes goes by, and then my parents come in, and I was already in the bathtub. So my mom got in front of me, but her back was to my knees. You know, I had my knees up and the wall behind me. There wasn't enough room for my dad, of course, so he just kind of kneeled beside the bathtub.
People often describe tornadoes as sounding like a freight train, which sounds like, why would it sound like that? But that is what it sounds like.
I don't remember that kind of sound. To me, it sounded like a bunch of pots and pans clanging together, but it was getting louder. I remember my dad saying, "Hold on tight." And I don't know if he said that because he heard the same thing, kind of, like he knew it was coming. It was just like whoosh, like everything was just like gone. The wall behind me, it fell. I remember it like pushing me down, and I could feel it like pushing me. And I just remember like the dirt going in my mouth because I was trying to breathe, and I remember trying to like spit it out, and then that's it. It just went black.
This is a severe thunderstorm warning issued by the National Weather Service, Austin, San Antonio.
Once we got out the door, we were assigned to North Austin because we got a report that there were tornadoes in the area and a couple of them had touched down to the ground. People were still driving about, and you hear all the sirens and the emergency vehicles, and people weren't responding as fast as they probably should have.
It's pretty exciting for us, and we haven't had this much thunderstorm activity for quite a while.
As we were on our way, we could see the funnel cloud like in the distance. And so I remember telling my photographer, just figure out a way, like I'm yelling at him. He's like, look at the map. I'm like, I don't have time to look at the map. We didn't have GPS on phones back then, so we had the traditional map. So we're like turning the pages, trying to figure out like what's a side street we can go and cut down or cut around so that we can go around the barricades.
Saw that the funnel cloud start off over here. It was real small, and as it moved over this way, it started getting larger, and it's touched down somewhere over near 1431.
This is the first time I've seen this videotape. I've seen the tornado from Jarrell. You're looking now at the tornado that hit Cedar Park.
So did you go out to
Yes.
this section of Cedar Park? And
Yeah.
you were with the photographer that got this video?
Yes, that was 183 right before you get to 1431.
It appears not to be as wide or as powerful as the tornado that moved through the Jarrell area, but certainly even a tornado of this size and this magnitude can inflict serious damage.
There was a strip mall, and I think it was like some medical facility, and everybody came out.
We were out standing up front, and then all of a sudden it disappeared, and then I saw it come back almost overhead. I went inside, went in the bathroom, which is the only room in there that doesn't have any glass, and 30 seconds later I come out, and this is what's there.
Most of the damage was done in Cedar Park, and it moved its way from Cedar Park to the Anderson Mill area out north. As you can see, that whole strip mall is completely destroyed. All the businesses were completely wiped out. There were people inside at the time. They watched the entire thing happen.
Oh my God, that's
So
me.
that's you talking to Jim?
Yes. We didn't have time to edit anything. It was just pop the tape in and talk about what we saw, and we're sitting with Jim Spencer, which you hear on the tape. So it was just kind of like play by play. We were just talking about what we saw.
It was a funnel cloud over top of it, looked like Albertsons, and it was coming at us.
Another tornado, I believe it turned out to be an F3, struck the Albertsons grocery store.
Was in there shopping, and he used his cell phone to call his wife, and in the middle of the conversation he screamed, and that was the end of it.
The scream originated inside what's left of this Albertsons store.
There were several people injured. It could have been much worse. The manager of that store herded a lot of the customers into the refrigeration units that are protected by steel doors, and it managed to save a lot of people that day.
Rail cars from the vintage steam train Hill Country Flyer were thrown around. The tornado left another devastating path in the Buttercup Creek subdivision.
Several hundred homes were damaged, 136 were damaged, 11 homes destroyed.
The twister toppled this RV across the yard. Bricks were blown off homes.
I saw it go behind that house, go behind my house, go straight across my backyard, pull that old oak tree straight up out of the ground 100 feet in the air and crash down on my house.
The second or third time we went back out, there was an area somewhere in Travis County. I don't know exactly where it was.
We are right off Highway 71 near Pertonellis, where there is extensive damage.
When we got there, there was a gentleman who lives in a trailer, and there was an emergency management person on the scene, and he told the guy, don't go back because we have another system moving our way. It was a matter of minutes. He went back and he was killed.
This is his house.
was really scary because as we're doing the interview, the emergency guy that we were talking to was hearing on his radio, another system is moving, it's moving quickly. I couldn't really process what he was saying at the moment. I just remember him saying, we're gonna have to tear down right now, right in this moment. I'm like, no, we have to finish talking to you. He goes, no, ma'am. And he looked me dead in the eye and said, no, we have to leave right now. It is very dangerous.
It's just now, it's anybody's guess as to how many deaths that we have from this storm.
Walked out our back door into the backyard, and it was quiet. The rain had generally stopped. We all look up and we look over the horizon, and we realize that there's nothing on the horizon anymore where you used to see houses. You could see the Double Creek subdivision, you could see everything that was here from my house. And I remember thinking, well, that's odd, as an 8-year-old. Wonder what happened. And then we started to hear sirens.
We're right in the middle of Double Creek Estates subdivision, what was ground zero of the deadly, intense F5 Jarrell tornado. And here where we're standing, this used to be a house.
Yeah, one of the few empty lots still to this day, 25 years later. Most people rebuilt. There are still a few lots around.
So who all was home at your house, and take us through what happened best you know?
Kathy, his pregnant fiance, and then him. I mean, they wouldn't let us out here for days, mainly because there was dead bodies.
Authorities won't let him in to see what, if anything, is left.
Some of my customers think I'm dead. They don't even know I even exist. I'm not wiped out, I'm alive.
Stephanie Peterson lost everything to the tornado.
They're telling everyone, oh, they're doing this for us and they're doing that for us, and they aren't doing anything.
How did you find out about your family members?
The man, Danik, who had built some of these houses and some over on the other side, he was kind of like a first responder because it was small, and he saw me and he told me there was, because I said, I can't get out there. I don't know what's going on, because there's nothing there.
Other than being banged up, Virginia Davidson is also one of the lucky ones. In the flattened subdivision, there's nothing left of her house. The twister picked it up with her in the bathtub.
I saw my neighbors right next to me outside looking at it, and we could all see it coming. And then I went inside and I never saw them again.
You know,
they didn't make it.
You can have EF5 tornadoes and still have a little bit of the structure left, an interior wall, interior closet. These were foundations, and not just one or two. You know, most of this subdivision was nothing left but foundations out here. The homes were gone. Cars, there were dozens and dozens of cars. They were never found because the tornado was moving so slowly with winds of 260 to 300 miles per hour. It just ground everything up.
That was significant to see that. And you really have no word to describe what you're seeing. And thinking about what did that damage, you think, I didn't realize a weather system could be that powerful to wipe out complete neighborhoods and to scatter houses as if you just peel off a piece of paper and throw it in the wind. That's what it was like looking at where houses stood. You couldn't even tell there were houses.
Yeah, families that were home that day, school was out, end of May, an entire family of 5. I'll never forget the Igo family. The entire family of 5 were all killed by the tornado that day. Johnny Ruiz at age 15 and Michael Ruiz at age 14. We're talking about people that did the right thing that day. Those 2 boys were in a mobile home a little bit up over here from the subdivision, and they were smart enough to know they should be out of the mobile home, so they went down to their friend's house in the subdivision.
Then there's Billy Howard LaFrance, 41, a father.
His wife and his 9-year-old daughter got in the tub. The tornado hit, carried him away, and he died that day. The mother and the daughter being in that bathtub saved their life.
And when I woke up, it was raining. It felt like the rain was burning me. My injuries were mainly big cuts, big wounds, basically. This is probably the most noticeable on my arm. This one, and then I have one on my right hip.
And so that bathtub saved y'all's life.
Yeah, being there, I don't know, because the bathtub was, I mean, it was just gone. They never found it. It wasn't like anywhere by us or anything. Somehow we made it out.
We've been out here just about every day looking for anything that we can find that belonged to Emma so that we can give it back to her boys.
The day after family and friends buried their grandmother, their mother, their friend, they're searching the remains of her house.
And even in the days after, I mean, with more and more of that footage coming through in the stories, I mean, I'm sure you probably watched some of that on TV too.
Oh,
right?
yeah. The relief and gratitude quickly turned to just, shock and grief, knowing what had happened just, 20 miles away from us.
All it took was a ride in a helicopter for Governor Bush to say he was completely blown away by what Mother Nature had done.
The tornado hits, and it's as if it sucked the life out of the ground.
Government responded quite well. Governor Bush went up there a couple of days after and said it was the worst tornado he's ever seen. Asphalt was ripped out of the streets. The homes were wiped out at the slab. There were reports of 300 head of cattle that were killed. Some were blown a quarter mile away, if you can imagine that.
The only thing I lost was my dog and my bird. And your house. And my house and my everything, and just, you name it, I lost it.
Such death and destruction at such an early age makes you think about what's important in life, and I think that it's molded my perspective.
Scenes like this, neighbors taking care of neighbors in a makeshift shelter, volunteers searching through the rubble, hoping for a miracle.
For a very long time, it was funeral after funeral after funeral. And I think my parents, in a lot of ways, were trying to shield me from the gravity of what had happened. And I don't remember attending the funerals. I don't know that I even did. I think there was such a focus on remembering the impact that those families had, the lives that the children never got to lead.
To think it's going to be normal and non-existent would be, unfair to say. It's something we've had to deal with, and our kids have to deal with it.
The place that we're at, Memorial Park, right now is directly in the line of the destruction of the tornado. A family's land donated to the city to have a gathering place, to have community. If you come out here in the summer and the spring, there's a packed parking lot, Little League games going on, so that community is still here.
No one alive had ever seen a tornado like that here in any of our Central Texas area.
And we haven't seen one since.
No.
Anywhere in Texas.
Anywhere in Texas. There has not been a tornado as strong as an F5.
The feeling among the survivors is they all knew it was coming, but with a tornado this powerful, even more warning probably wouldn't have saved any more lives.
Generally, there is a lot more time to prepare now. Sometimes we can see these tornado outbreaks days in advance, not just a day, but you're talking 4, 5, maybe even 6 days out, where we know that the atmosphere is coming together to produce, a probable tornado event.
When we talk about tornado warning for the Jarrell area, we always try to reassure the folks up there, what the situation truly is just Doppler indicated.
Sure.
We really try to comfort the folks in Jarrell.
It seems that at least several families have chosen to stick around, still here today in Double Creek Estates subdivision.
There are a few families out here that did rebuild.
I'd ride my bike down there and it would be just weird, just being, you could kind of tell where the driveways used to be, and just being there, and the houses were gone, and you knew they weren't coming back, and so that was hard.
The names on the memorial behind us, how many do you know?
All 27 of them.
I get that Jarrell doesn't want to be known as the tornado town, but I just don't want people to forget either, because a lot of people were affected, and a lot of families, and you know, they deserve to be remembered.
You can never forget the history and the roots of what made Jarrell before 1997, on May 27th, 1997, and I think as long as you never forget, then that means that Jarrell is still partially the same place that it should be, and maybe changes for the better.